Sauna. Welcome to In the Sauna with Dr. Kasey and Payton Lewis.
Welcome back to Sauna Talk, baby.
Today's subject, innate healing. What is that?
Sounds like the intelligence that was given to us to heal, or, mend, think,
Adapt.
breathe, walk, talk, adapt.
Okay. So, for instance, in the world that I live in and that I've raised you kids in, we have our own language. And that language is ultimately what separates our profession from really every profession on planet Earth. When we say innate, we're talking about the body's inner wisdom. Okay? And so, for instance, when a baby is being developed inside of a mother, is there an educated brain telling the eyeballs how to be made?
No.
No. It's not telling the heart when to come online. It's not telling the intestinal tract how to digest food or what vitamins to absorb. It's not there. It's not present. Right?
No.
Okay. So when we talk about innate intelligence in our field, that term wasn't even heard of really by any of their healthcare professions in the 1920s, 1910s. And because the chiropractic profession was being attacked so severely by the AMA back in the day, they ultimately fought and won in courts clear up till 1978, when the Supreme Court said, hey, you can no longer defraud chiropractic. You have to treat them as a portal of healthcare entry system. So we have terms like universal intelligence, innate intelligence, matter, force, universal laws, stuff like that. And so I raised you kids in this model. When I first heard this model, it was clear back in 1980, I want to say 89. Yeah. And when I heard this language, I was like, that sounds really like how I was already raised, because it just made sense.
But you weren't raised like I was raised.
Yeah.
But because you had a better understanding of, you were raised in a pretty simplistic way of, you guys only ate, organic, or drank organic milk, organic this and that, or whatever, right?
Without the word organic. Because
Right.
we were raised on a farm, so everything we got was whole.
I mean, back then, things were not
Like
genetically modified stuff,
Yeah,
and there wasn't such thing back then, really, right?
Exactly.
And so you still were kind of in that path of genetic and people, or whatever, but then you kind of like went to chiropractic school and understood I guess, the organic and like the natural way even more, and then you raised me and my siblings in that way, and so now that's all I know. I know different sides, and I know the reason why I was raised this way, and the reason why I wasn't raised another way.
So, I guess I've always been a nonconformist, and what I mean by that is, like, we had these vaccines that were given in junior high school. It was called a booster. Well, I got in the line. I didn't have my form that said I could have it. I was in the line, and the line went this way, and then it went around, and it came back out, and people got their shots back there, and that's what you just walked through, and you gave this piece of paper. So I just darted through the room and went to the next line. I never even got the vaccine, never got the shot, not thinking that, I just like, no, man, I don't need no stupid shot. I am not getting this so-called booster thing. I never did. And I go back and tell all my friends, like, and when they're in line, and I had like 4 of my friends not go through. They went through and didn't do it either. And and it was kind of like,
The beginning of it all.
the beginning in a sense of a mindset. So then when I got into chiro school, I got introduced to these pioneer docs that, started back in the 1940s. And, they had kids and grandkids and great-grandkids that had never been vaccinated. And I was just like, what? What do you mean? What's that mean? I don't even get it. Because I grew up and we had three. I had measles, I had polio, and I think it was mumps and rubella or whatever. That was it. That's all we got. And so, so when I started learning, I started educating myself and reading books and talking to all these other people. The only reason why I did what I did with you kids is like, that's somewhat of an assault on the brain. So why do I want to assault on Innate? When Innate made this, without me thinking about it, I mean, granted, I did a lot of work to make it all happen, but that process, we just sat back and watched. So it didn't make any sense to me that I would have this assault to your brains occur at a young age of 2 years when you were born with everything you needed. So that's why we went down that road. And so you growing up, going to school, hearing all these stories about, if you don't get vaccinated, you're going to die.
No. I was like, what's a fun fact about you? And I was like, never been vaccinated because, everybody else in the room was. And they all were like, how are you alive? How are you alive? And I'm like, I'm here. I don't know. But I was younger and I didn't have an understanding of
6, 7.
Why? Like, why didn't I, I was young, I'm not brilliant or smart or have an educated mind. The reason why I wasn't getting vaccinated, or the reason why I wasn't allowed to take pills, or the reason why when I got chicken pox, I would just have chicken pox, or when I got a fever, I just slept it out, or when I got a flu, I just rested it out. Like, I don't understand. I didn't know why. I just was raised that way, And so kids are like, how are you alive? I'm like,
so
I'm here.
When do you think, you've been adjusted since, weeks of being alive and been adjusted your whole life, and you never saw a pediatrician. The only time you've ever seen a doctor has been for when you had to have a knee surgery and when you had to have your shoulder surgery, and that's it, right?
Yeah, from an injury, yeah.
So we call that what? Crisis care, right? Injury care. Which is what medicine is for. So when did you, what makes you go, I need an adjustment, Dad?
Right now, I don't know, just when I feel like I'm not functioning proper, like when I feel like I'm not clear-headed, or like I'm just kind of in pain, or just don't feel right.
From a long workout.
Yeah, long workouts, a long week of work, working out.
Stress at school, a sickness.
Yeah, sickness. Like if I feel like getting a cold, I'm like, hey, can I get my atlas adjusted?
Yeah.
And so I can like embrace this, or like speed up the process so my body allows it to like heal. It just allows it to happen, and so it can heal fast. And then I'm stronger from it,
So innately, your body talks to you, and and over the years, your innate's got louder and louder and louder.
Yeah.
The more you come to understand.
Yeah.
The effects of pills, potions, notions, and knives.
Yeah, like being an athlete, like you want to be very self-conscious on what you take in your body, because if you take in garbage, you're going to produce garbage. If you take in, quality nutrition, you're going to perform with quality, Kind
of like putting gas in your car. If you put really cheap gas, you're going to gum up your car, you're going to gum up your engine.
Yeah. And so I was raised on read the label what's in it, and all that stuff. But I was like, when I was younger, I was like, I don't even know what they're talking about. And now, like, going through college, and I'm like, oh, read the label, I have a better understanding of what this word means, or this chemical that's in the food means.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like, I have that choice of either putting this in my body and knowing that it's going to affect it a certain way, or not putting it in my body and knowing that it's not going to affect my body because I didn't put it in my body, you know?
Okay, so here, he had a good point. This is the whole premise to why we did what we did. Our parents, my parents, came as a baby boomer. They were the first generation of people that got duped into this pill, potion, and notion society that started ultimately probably in the 1940s and really took off in the 1950s and 60s, where insurance companies were developed and there was no longer this, primary physician and secondary payer. It became a third-party thing where insurance companies were involved with your health. So people made decisions according on who's going to pay for that. So
people made decisions off money.
Yeah, and so the whole reason why we did what we did was ultimately it's about longevity. It's about having a quality of life. Let's say you only live to be 50. I'd rather have you have 49 high quality years and maybe that last few minutes of your life you get ran over by a bus or something. But you had a high quality of life. So what you do to your body today affects it tomorrow. And that tomorrow may be 20 years down there or 30 years.
Yeah.
So being in the game as long as I have for 28 years, I see people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. And those people in their 90s, the ones that are still being adjusted are those people that did things back here in their 50s and 40s that are now manifesting themselves and when these people are 90. So we're trying to give you as least amount of toxic bombardment on the nervous system as possible. That's the whole premise why we did what we did with not vaccinating you, not giving you an aspirin for every time you had a headache or a cold or a fever. We ultimately looked at what could we give your body its most optimal potential to heal itself. Number one, an adjustment. Why? We're clearing out the brain's ability to talk to the body and the body back to the brain. Number two, nutrition. It is one of your biggest medicines. Number three, maybe an herb, an oil, like doTERRA. Things that are going to give your body its most optimal ability to work with what it already has.
Yeah, it gives it gives it like I guess if someone were to take steroids, it's giving the body power to be able to lift more, build the body up more. So when you give the body nutrition and what it actually needs, that it can basically use, like proper nutrition and oils or whatever, the body can use that when interference is not even, interrupted. It can use that at full
maximum.
Full capacity.
I went to college. Track and field is probably one of the biggest abusers of steroids in any sport in the world. And I went to college, and on my team, I can name 12 guys that were huge steroid takers. Huge. And to this day, I see pictures of them. I see them. I'm like, and I've actually talked to a few, and they've got issues today because you took something that wasn't natural and gave it to the body and made the body overproduce. And there's results of that. It affects your adrenals. It affects the cardiovascular system. It affects some system in your body that may not manifest on the time that you're taking it. And you may stand on a podium and receive a gold medal, but I guarantee you, down the road, your life isn't all that great. And I'll use Grandpa, my dad. He was a professional football player that broke his neck. And this was back in the day when there was no face masks, and he sacrificed his body in the game of football. Well, guess what? When he was 60 years old, he started coming down with a heavy dementia. Yeah. And it's because he probably had over 200 concussions. And then in his world, he wasn't really nutritionally very astute to when you drink Pepsi every day, it is going to create an acidic environment and break down your joints. And every one of his joints, there wasn't a joint in his body that wasn't degenerated, was there? His knees, his ankles, his wrists, his elbow, his neck, his back, everything. He had some sort of degeneration. So his quality of life from like 65 and up was not good. He was in pain every day. He didn't sleep well. He just was dealing with stuff. But because he was who he was, You know, I adjusted him 3 days a week when I got out of school, sometimes 5 days a week. And that's the only thing that would keep him off of taking 20 Advil a day. You know, he suffered dearly. And that's an example of taking the body beyond its capabilities of healing, dealing, and mending, in gravity. So that's the big premise behind why you kids didn't get vaccinated. You know, we educated you about, if you can find something that has no side effects, like an herb, food, mostly food, that can help your body heal, that adjustment is simply removing interference to allow your body to maximize its potential of whatever you put into it. It's going to maximize what it's trying to do, which is heal you and mend you. I mean, think of it this way. If I have a tumor in my head and I have the best neurosurgeon take the tumor out of my head, and then the tumor is removed, what's the tumor been doing? It's been causing interference to my brain's ability to talk to my body back to my brain. So when they remove the tumor, what then occurs? Do they sit there and give all these amazing medicines to heal the body, or do they stitch you up and they watch you lay in this bed and they watch your innate intelligence go to work, recourse blood vessels, mend, blah, 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 blah. And then finally, when you're able to function again, they release you from the hospital. Yeah. Your innate's at work, and what little is given to the body after the tumor is removed, in a sense, is innate at work doing what it's supposed to do.
I would say that the way I was raised was basically was an understanding that I can understand what I should and what I shouldn't put in my body, and the effects that it has, good or bad, like I was saying earlier. And so, for example, vaccines is a huge topic, and people send death threats to each other. People, just you're.
It's like a religion.
Yeah,
it's like truly a religion.
People are literally. I've talked to people that literally comment on a vaccine thing, and they'll get 20 to 30 death threats from other people because they didn't choose to vaccinate their kid. Mm-hmm. Why is that? What? I hear people talking about vaccines and why you shouldn't be taking vaccines, you shouldn't be doing that, but they never tell you why and what's in it. Mm-hmm. So when I was raised, I was taught why you shouldn't, because this is what's in it, and this is what's in it. And the things, the ingredients that are in it, these are the effects that each ingredient has in your body. So let's just break down one vaccine for everybody to understand.
For us, it was very simple. You want to do everything you can to prevent as many assaults on the nervous system as possible.
Because the nervous system is the first thing built, right?
Yeah, the first thing made from a sperm and an egg. And then from there, the heart's made. And then everything's made in the human body. So we know the foundational aspect of our existence is your brain. So we want to do anything and everything we can to not assault that brain. When it's just developing. Think about a baby. The baby doesn't even learn how to crawl and walk until it's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 months old?
I don't know, I never had one.
Well, I think you're 12 months old. And point being is that the brain is still growing perfectly. And yet you're going to assault that brain at the age of 1.5, 2? It just didn't make any logical sense. So I know there's a lot of people that saying, oh, it saved the, no, it didn't save the universe. If you do the research and you look at other countries like Europe in particularly, they didn't do the campaign that we did, and their numbers actually dropped off. And there's a ton of research out there to prove exactly what I'm saying. So don't believe me. Go out and research it. One of the best books I read when I was early on in my career was The Reality Behind the Myth by Waylon Jennings. Good book. Go read that and go from there. Start from that book and go forward, and get the other side story. And I've had discussions with MDs about this, and they've never had this kind of a side where I said, look, if you want to get a vaccination when your kids are 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 10, go for it. At least you're giving the brain more time to develop and more time to get strong. And then that assault isn't going to be nearly as harsh at that age. I personally wouldn't do that, but if you feel better about that, then so be that. But, you know, numbers of things and diseases and so forth, there's all kinds of research out there about vaccinated kids actually shed more disease than the unvaccinated. The kids that are unvaccinated have a 500% higher immune response than the vaccinated kids. I mean, it's just common sense. Just go read for yourself. Don't take my word for it, because that's what I had to do. I went and educated myself. I didn't believe what one person said. I read about probably 10 books, and I talked to, I don't know, a good 100 different people. And a lot of those people that didn't get vaccinated, and a lot of those people that did get vaccinated. And everything just made more sense to me what the non-vaccinated people said. And that's why I did what I did, you know. And so, in this game now, 28 years, when I put my hands on somebody's spine, I just heard this from Dr. Schiffman tonight, is that there's a Greek terminology for when you put a hand, when you lay your hands on somebody, you are actually lighting the fire within that person. And that's what we talk about, is that when I make an adjustment to you, I'm removing any interference of your innate intelligence. I am lighting a fire, allowing the body to heal, deal, and mend. Not necessarily I'm putting an energy, but that energy is ultimately, if placed very specifically at the right place at the right time, it's removing interference and allowing the body to do what it already innately knows what to do. It made you. It's born there.
Right.
It's that simple.
So explain to me just a few things that are in vaccines, because I don't know. I know a few things like mercury.
Yeah.
Like, how is that good for the body?
It's not. It's a very, very...
Because when like mercury is like spilled in a building, aren't people supposed to be like...
Don't touch it! Get away! We gotta have an evac team come in.
But you have to inject it in your body.
Yeah. There's also where do they... Let's do it the simple way right here. If I take an apple and it's on a tree, and I smack the apple with a club, whack, and I bruise the apple, but I leave the apple attached to the tree, you'll come back like 2 weeks later and that apple has got this funky interwoven healing process
like a
to
scab,
it.
yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, because the tree is still, the apple's still, in a sense, innately attached to that which is given it life.
Yeah, it's like it's attached to the nervous system.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But if I pluck the apple and I set it down next to the tree and I come back 2 weeks later, is that apple going to be healing? No, it's actually rotting.
Yeah.
It's completely rotting. So when they make vaccinations, they have to use a tissue that in other words, they're transcribing the RNA gene, right? They're replicating things. So they have to take it from a tissue, a monkey, a sheep, a cow, animals, right? So I used to do medical research where I did toxic shock syndrome, and I used to bop rabbits over the back of the head and the neck, dislocate them, and then I'd cut their chest open, remove the heart while it was still beating, and I would cut like a papillary muscle and an atrial muscle and a ventricular muscle, and I put it on these stimulators. And then I would have a buffer called that which had sodium, chloride, potassium, all the things necessary for that muscle to function, but I would give it a stimulant, which would be electricity, so that it would fire. And then I would inject this toxin into these pools of muscles to see how long it took to kill that muscle. And that toxin was toxic shock, i.e. toxic shock syndrome became well known at that time, and then it was founded because of certain chemicals that were on tampons is what were creating that in women. So vaccines are that if I take that live tissue and I take it out of that live body and I cut it and then I use it by centrifuging it, by getting that then transcribed RNA out of that tissue, how am I going to keep that tissue from not rotting?
You're not.
You have to use a preserving agent.
Oh.
What's a huge preservative agent? Formaldehyde, mercury, nitrates, and nitrites. Those are huge chemicals that will preserve that tissue. So when they make a vaccination, it has to be preserved. Well, that's why they put all those chemicals in there so they can ship it off, put it on the shelf to be vaccinated months, whatever, weeks, year later. And so that individual is getting that so-called, transcribed RNA or DNA, but yet it's getting it with those chemicals.
I don't know how you do that with a shirt on.
It's so hard. But I'm fat. Fat people are not allowed to take their shirts off in the sauna until they're skinny again. And that's where I'm at. So there you go. It's all about chemical bombardment. And if you look it up and you see what's in all that stuff, along with the flu shots and blah, 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 you got to get proactive. It's like we talked about earlier.
Just learn about it. Like, don't just take an opinion from... If someone's going to tell you, hey, you should probably kill yourself, aren't you going to question them like, but why?
Yeah.
But why?
Yeah. And that's just it. Get proactive. The more proactive you are in your life, the less reactive you are down here. So the more you're proactive today, the less reactive you have to be tomorrow. So that's why we get adjusted on a weekly basis. If not, in your case, sometimes tri-weekly basis, is because what you put your system through, if it's really stressful, you probably need more adjustments. Not based on pain. We don't adjust according to pain. We're adjusting according to
stress
and what it's doing to your body. Period. It's that simple. And we call that get the big idea and all else follows. All else is life. And what life has. Life is abundant when you don't have to worry about, am I going to get cancer this week? Am I going to get diabetes this week? Because you're so proactive in your diet. You're so proactive with your adjustments. You're so proactive with your thought processes. Just your mental thought processes is so powerful that you become a very...
Educate yourself. I mean, you don't have to go to school to educate yourself.
That's right.
You know?
Boom, there's too much out there.
All right, guys. That's another one in the books. Number 4.
It's
Let's
hot.
go. Go get your merch.
Die.
Let's go get your merch. Verticalelite.com.
See you next
Be
time.
the best you. Let's go.
Peace
Deuces.
out.
In the sauna.